While setting up for a shoot, I was listening to some of my favorite channels and came across Tim Chuon's recent video talking about negative feedback and comments on his video talking about art. This video is going to continue that conversation quite a bit, so make sure to check out that video up here or in the links below. If I'm a good editor, they'll be in both spots, so let's see if I lived up to that expectation. So let's get a drink in hand and talk about this lovely world of board games. You can't know this, but I am recording this in the morning, so I will not be drinking alcohol in this video, but I have instead mixed myself one of the kids' favorite drinks, a traditional lemon lime and bitters. Don't go halfway with this, only use fresh juices, either squeezed or use the super juices. Links up here to the cocktail time with Kevin Koss. This is such a simple drink that you can build in the glass. It has 1 part lemon, 1 part lime, 2 parts sugar syrup, and either 4 parts or fill the glass with soda water. Stir and add several dashes of Angostura bitters to your tasting, and if you're feeling a little bit fancy, add a lemon or lime rind. Now that we've got the drink, let's start talking about the game. And this is going to be my editing nightmare because I'm going to take drinks while we talk. One of the things I've been seeing a lot of is this absolute polar, unable to talk. Realistically, we need to be able to have fun conversations with the realizations that our perspective is going to be different to other people's. In this instance, I actually agree with Tim. Disliking a game does not make it a bad game. In fact, in many ways, it's a very interesting kind of topic to talk about. Now, we're going to get unscripted here. I'm reading off my notes and I'm going to be looking at my screen, trying to figure out what to actually say, because I don't want to script this, I want it to come from the heart, but that means that I do have some talking points to get to. So in his video, Tim talked about arcs and being a lot of comments in his channel about how it's a bad game. Now, realistically, to me, like Tim's version of a good game really relied on, or a bad game really relied on having bad rules. And I kind of looked at that and I said, well, actually, I think it's a bit further because I have some of my favorite games have terrible rules that are written terribly. Now that's the piece of paper that you read it from, but that doesn't make it a bad game. To me, is the game playable? And there's very few games that I've come across that are completely unplayable, but there are games that, yeah, even without the rules, if you throw the rules in the bin because they're absolute terrible dog doo-doo, let's just actually look at the gameplay so we figure our way through. And I think there's probably only been 3 games in my entire several thousand playthroughs at this point of different games. Gosh, I'd imagine actual plays would be in the tens of thousands at the points. I need to get a life. But realistically, I kind of look at, well, what are we actually, what are we comparing here? If they've written the rules well, great, that helps me get into the game really quickly. But that doesn't mean that it's a good or a bad game. It just means that I can get into the rules. So for me, it's about, is the game playable or not? And if it's unplayable, then no, that's a bad game. But then there's the games that I don't like. Either I don't like the mechanics, I don't like the theme, or it's just, it's not scratching the itch that I'd want it to scratch. And that's not a bad thing. I've got plenty of games that I don't particularly like playing, but my friends do. And that's where, for us, what we actually do on the channel, we don't cover games that are unplayable. We're just not going to do that. Ever, no way. We also, and we can go into a topic of paid versus unpaid, and we don't ever take payment for games. Realistically, if we're covering a game, we're covering it because we enjoy it. We're spending a lot of time and effort creating these videos, from the drinks, from the playthrough, from the understanding and making a simple teach that anyone can understand. That all takes time and effort. And if we don't like the game, then we're not going to do it. Now, that doesn't mean that we won't cover it on the channel if we believe it's important. It just means that I won't. But then we've got Kate, we've got Callum, we've got Dave, we've got so many within the team that actually they might love the game and they might want to cover it. It's about what we're interested in and what we want to share with you, rather than sharing something that you should avoid. And it just seems very, very negative, and that's just something we'll never actually go into. So for us, it's about that team dynamic. And realistically, if you see something on the channel, you could pretty much automatically, I love Shut Up and Sit Down, but we know when we're going into it that the game that they're covering is going to be sold out straight away, and that they're doing it because they love it. And I think every content creator is probably doing that to an extent. The only issue, and this is where if you're getting paid to do the game, then that's probably where we need to make the explanations of, yes, I'm getting paid to do this, because you can't get that full. But getting a copy of the game for free, we can go into a whole conversation around that. I think that's a different topic altogether. But this actually then goes into the next thing, which is kind of the segue into human psychology, because realistically, one of the big things that I really, really dislike is rating systems. Because realistically, a rating system is basically trying to take the bad game, good game, put it on a scale. And if we can't actually agree on what a bad game is, because realistically, a bad game to me is something that's unplayable, or a game I don't like is something different. So why would a game I don't like, score the similar or the same as something that's bad? By the same token, if I like a mechanic, if we look at the converse, I'm going to be looking at games that, or themes, or mechanics that really excite me or get me going. They're going to be up higher. So for instance, I quite like the hidden roles and movements. If it's done well, I quite like that. But Kate really doesn't. So any game that she looks at in that is always going to be on the lower side of things, whereas any game I look at is probably going to be on the higher side of it. That doesn't mean that our ratings are wrong. It just means that our ratings should be weighted to that. And they just don't do that. No rating systems does that, whether you're looking at out of 10 or whether you're looking at 5 stars or whatever. And that's actually why in our videos, if you go back and have a look at all our content, all that content that we have created, we've created quite a lot. Still a lot more to create, but we always ask questions rather than give ratings. So we always start with, would you play this game again? And that's a really good qualifying question, because realistically what we're going is, am I actually going to get this to the table again? Would I actually want to get this to there? With so many choices, you can see I've got a large collection right here. What games would we actually cover and what wouldn't we? Then the next one is actually, what would we recommend it to a friend? And for us, that's actually really important, because we're going to be recommending it to all of you. So hopefully when you see a video or a game that we cover, you know that we've actually taken that care. But that's actually quite a useful one, because if you're not willing to put your stake on a game and say, yeah, that's a good game, you should give it a go, then it's not actually as good as you think it is. The third one is actually, would you buy this game? And that's actually quite an important thing. Now, it's very hard sometimes to do this, because you're just like, well, I already have it, so I'm not going to buy it. It's like, well, technically the answer is yes, because you've already bought it. So the question there is a hypothetical, would you buy the game if you didn't have it, kind of thing. So it's, would you buy the game at any stage? And there's actually multiple answers to that. Whereas the first question we're asking, would you play it again, is a simple binary yes or no. Second one is would you recommend it to friends? It's like, no, only some friends, or yes, everyone. I think everyone should play this game. So that's like, it's got a little bit of nuance. But then this last one has a lot more nuance, because it's actually going, well, yes, I would buy it, but I'd only buy it if it was on special, or I would only buy it if a friend didn't have it. So when we first started these ratings, we actually had all of that wrapped up in one. Now we're kind of trying to break that apart and say, would you buy it? No. Yes, only if on special. Yes, I'd buy it at retail. Or yes, I would pay whatever I need to get this game. Because there are games like that. There are games that you can't get anymore, or the like, and you'd go above and beyond to try and get a copy of that game. And then we actually qualify that now, if a friend had it, would you get that game? And that's going to be how we're trying to separate that out. But effectively, what we're trying to do there is give that little bit more nuance to that important question of ownership or having it in your collection. And then the last question is actually about, would you add it to a favorites list? Because that's really quite important. Now, it doesn't have to be your top 10 games of all time, but it could be, this is my top, this is number 2 on my list of top hidden role games, or this is my number 2 on the war themes, or things like that. So it's about, how do we look at that from a favorites perspective, and if you could find a list that would actually go on. That's actually quite a good qualifier in most cases, because it's like, well, actually, no, I like the game, but you know what? I would still rather play X or Y or Z. So usually trying to stick to what is the top 3 rather than top top 10. We then actually, and this is where what I'm actually working towards, we have all of those ratings on the app. So app.gamesnight.fun, subtle plug. We actually go through and we look at all of those and we add weightings in the back. So we're doing that right now, adding those subtle weightings that can, so each question has a slight weighting. Obviously buying a game is a lot more weighted than simply wanting to play the game again. Because realistically, what you're actually trying to do there is determine, well, I would play a game again, but that doesn't mean I would go out and buy it. So it's good, but it's not something that I'm craving over and over. Whereas something that I'd buy or something that I'd spend any amount of, like, I would really, put out there, or even buy, for instance, David, who lives just around the corner, would go buy, already had. For instance, Fog of Love. He has a copy of it. I have a copy of it. And I think even Kate has a copy of it. We live all within 5 minutes of each other, and we all have a copy of that game because we love it so much. So it gets a super, super high rating or weighting, because not only do we want to play it again, we actually have got copies of it regardless of how easily we would have access to that game. What we're actually trying to do, and it's not in the app yet, so I'm just going to preface that, it's something that the ultimate aim here is, by asking these extra qualifying questions, which are very quick and easy to answer. I don't think anyone could, it'd take you really much longer than saying a star rating, because star rating is ambivalent. Your 5-star is going to be different to my 5-star. I don't think I've ever given something a 5-star because there's always room for improvement. Those questions actually, once we've got the weighting in there, but what we actually want to do within the app as well is your profile is going to be different to my profile, because ultimately, if I have rated 10 hidden role games, and every time I've rated a game, I've given it a 5, I've given it really, really high ratings within the questions. So I would play it again, I would recommend it much to my friends, I'd buy it, and I'd buy it even if a friend had it. Well, that's like, almost the top being that I'd buy it even above recommended retail. Then, like, that rating, if I've given every hidden role game I've ever played that rating, well, then that actually doesn't mean as much, because I'm clearly biased towards those kind of games. Whereas if Kate was doing those ratings, she's always scoring them low. So she wouldn't play them again. She would recommend them to some friends. She wouldn't buy them, and she wouldn't buy them even if a friend had them, which you don't ask that qualifying question. If they say no, we don't need to ask that, even if a friend had them question. But she her ratings, if she's given every hidden role game that kind of rating, then we know that, okay, any scoring that she has is going to need to be weighted up to try and meet that mean, because no matter what she does, you'll actually never have a good hidden role game. So that if in some future state she actually does put forward a game that, oh, this is a game I would play again, but I'd still only recommend it to some friends. I'd only buy it if it was on special, and I wouldn't buy it if a friend had it. Well, then that's actually slightly higher. So for her, that's a glowing review for hidden roles. So for me, that's actually, that qualifying based on the person and what they've marked it previously is actually quite important. Now, yes, that's not perfect. It's going to take us time to build that functionality out, but that's where I'm kind of looking at and saying, well, just because I don't like a game doesn't mean you won't. Now, it means that I probably won't put the effort into covering it on the channel, but Kate might, or Dave might. So, but that also doesn't mean that if we don't cover it at all, well, there's many reasons why we might not cover it. We might not be able to get a copy of it. We might not have the time or capacity, because realistically, creating these videos takes a long time, weeks, if not months, because we have to do a lot of playthroughs. We have to understand the game. We want to make sure when we come to you with the game, it actually means something. So, yeah, that's kind of that big crux, in that really we want to be making sure that when we're having these conversations, or when we're recommending a game, it's just like, yeah, this is what we like. We would love you to like it, but if you don't, that's fine. We want to hear from you, but at the same time, come at that with a conversational attitude. Don't say that's a crap game. So, well, actually, have you played it, or have you, what about it didn't you like? And it's like, okay, that's fair, but is that actually any game? Do you not like any game that has that mechanic, or do you not like? So it's about, how do you frame that and give the insights that actually make a difference within there. So that's realistically a spiel. Like, I've been talking, I don't even know how long I've been talking on this. And this is probably why we script a lot of my videos, because, or any video I'm in, because I can talk a lot. You can see that on streams. And yeah, I don't know. I think hopefully, well, if we get heat, that's fine. Like, you might disagree with us. You know what? That's okay. Have a constructive feedback, and provide that in the comments below, so that we can have a conversation about it, because I would love to be to look at a different vantage point. And that's the big part. It's understanding that everyone has their own vantage or perspective, and actually looking through each of our perspectives and saying, okay, I can see where you're coming from. And in fact, that's actually, we're already planning the next video in which we're going to be talking about some of the other kind of peripheral surroundings of board games. I don't want to spoil the topic just yet because I think it's quite exciting, and we're actually going to have not just me talking to you on the camera. We'll have, I believe Dan actually is going to be coming over and we'll be talking about that particular topic as well. That was a lot of me talking, and I actually don't even know if I covered all of the topics that I wanted to, because realistically, I kind of went on a tangent, and you probably might not be entirely happy with anything I said. In fact, it's all a bit of a daze. I probably should have been drinking alcohol rather than non-alcohol, because at least I would then have an excuse. But I think to summarize, yeah, for me, a bad game is not a game that has bad rules. That's a game that has bad rules. The game has to be, for me, unplayable. It's a game that is not actually playable. The rule, like in terms of how the game is played, rules, not the rules that are written. But in terms of, for instance, if it's broken and weighted towards one particular style of play, or if it is, I don't know, a game that realistically doesn't clinch any of those kind of, I don't know, I guess it's very hard to describe because it's a very weird and nebulous kind of area. But for instance, there's a game that we played in that the boards tied together and it was kind of like a chess, but some of the factions were just so overpowered that realistically there wasn't really much of a game. And this is where actually, some people don't like luck games. So realistically, if you're just rolling a dice and then if the decisions are so nominal, for instance, and this is where a lot of people, I would consider Monopoly a bad game, because you have no decision making, you have no agency, and things happen to you. You can't happen to the game, and that's for me, that's the epitome of a bad game. It's like, if I'm not part of it, if I don't have the agency as a player, then why am I playing? I'm merely a spectator on what is happening. So yeah, I think that that's a great example. Now, yes, I do have a copy of Monopoly because it's a copy of Monopoly. I think it's something like 20 or 25 years old. So it's an old copy. I haven't bought a copy of it in a long time, but back in the 90s when I first got that was the only choice. I have a copy of Monopoly and I have a copy of Risk, and I've kept them. I still have them. Have I played them? No, I don't think I've played them in the last decade. That probably says something about my hoarding, but realistically, for me, it's good to keep those because it's good to get that reflection point. So yeah, long way and winded point of, I agree with Tim to a point. I don't think the rules themselves define it. It's how the implementation of the rules is like. So the written rules don't, to me, like, it's important because it's gonna color my judgment. Bad rules are just a nightmare. Hansa Teutonica is a great example. I actually really do not like the rules of that game. And a lot of the teach videos feel it's very complicated and convoluted. I think I had to spend about a week on trying to perfect those rules to be really, really sharp and clean, and easy, because I was trying to get to the simplicity on the other side of complexity. But that doesn't mean it's a bad game. I actually quite enjoy the game. It's very bland, sure, but it's a very kind of intense game that is really quite meaty and chunky, as Shut Up and Sit Down would say. But it's not a bad game. It just has bad rules. So yeah, that's kind of my extra qualifier to Tim Chuon is, it's not just about the rules as written, it's about how the rules play and then how the game is played. And if it's unplayable, if the game is unplayable, then it's a bad game. Whereas if it's a game that I don't attach to or I don't get that engagement to, it's just a game that I don't like. So maybe having that qualifier and putting that qualifier out there. So that has been my rant and probably talked way too long. Let's see how much I cut out. But it has been great to have you. If you're still with us at the end, thank you. Hopefully we've earned a bit of a subscribe or a like. Give a proper lemon lime bitters. Everyone gets their lemon lime bitters at a bar, and they're terrible because they're using cordials, they're using lemonades, and it's just ultimately sweet. But yeah, if you do it properly, you get fresh juices with a sugar syrup. Very easy to make all of those things. You can make them very quickly at home, and oh my God, do they taste so much better than the cordials you get. Thank you for joining us. We've got some more videos. We also have our shorts that come out every weekday, so give them a look. Thanks for joining us on this video. Let us know below what you think, and make sure that you drink responsibly but game wildly. Thanks.